I used to do a segment for my podcast called Pokédex Please, where I would evaluate and make fun of some of the more ludicrous Pokédex entries in the world of Pokemon. Things like Knacklestack turning its prey into beef jerky, Gorbis drinking you from the inside like a juice box, and Lantern being able to output more energy than the sun. The point of this segment was purely comical to get a laugh at how absurd the Pokédex entries were when juxtaposed next to the Pokemon series' friendly and adorable nature, but deep down, the Pokédex entries only confirm what I've believed about the world of Pokemon for a long time. Sharing a planet with creatures that routinely break the laws of physics would be a nightmare and most likely a death sentence. How do unremarkable humans even survive in a world where Pokemon regularly bend nature and the very elements to their will? The series would have you believe it's the power of friendship and Pokeballs that maintain the balance, but if this was reality, things would be much more complicated. I returned to the world of Pokemon for the latest entry, Pokémon Legends Z-A. As a longtime fan of the series, each new entry is an excuse to fix that Pokemon itch, to jump back into a world and gameplay that is familiar and comforting. But much to my surprise, Z-A actually asks the question that I've been pondering for years now. How do all-powerful Pokemon and helpless people coexist? Sure, in the wilderness, there's more space between humans and Pokemon, but what about sprawling urban centers with high concentrations of people? Z-A takes place in Lumiose City, the jewel of the Kalos region. After the events of Pokemon X and Y, Lumiose is undergoing an urban redevelopment plan led by the Quasartico Inc. Corporation in order to revitalize the city and create a place where humans and Pokemon can coexist together. This is genuinely an interesting component of the narrative because, yes, how do you create a place where humans and Pokemon can coexist together? The people and leaders of Lumiose have many different ideas and opinions on this question. Do they section off portions of the city to create safe wild zones for Pokemon to live in? Do they get rid of wild zones in favor of letting Pokemon freely mingle with the general populace? Answering this question takes on added urgency when wild Pokemon begin to randomly mega evolve, making them more powerful and dangerous, and this phenomenon is known as rogue mega evolution. A good portion of the story revolves around you as the main character getting stronger, climbing the ranks of the Z-A, Z-Alpha Royale in order to combat the threat that rogue mega evolution poses while trying to figure out its cause. Not to spoil the ending, but one large set piece later, the issue is discovered and subsequently resolved by the power of friendship between humans and Pokemon. In the endgame, you participate in the never-ending infinite Z-A Royale and catch some legendaries, all while the status quo that is questioned during the course of the game never changes, and the question of how Pokemon and people coexist in Lumiose City never has a clear, concrete answer. I should note that I haven't played any of the DLC for this game, so on the off chance that it is addressed in the DLC, I apologize, but this is my understanding of this game going forward. For whatever reason, this frustrated me. Z-A seemed more interested in its core gameplay loop and having me complete inane, brain-dead tasks for the population of the city who can't seem to function on their own without the help of a 10-year-old. While I still enjoyed the time I spent with Z-A, my fixation on this question warped the experience for me, and at the end when the credits rolled, I seriously had to ask myself, why did I care? You may have seen the meme that goes, inside me there are two wolves. Well, when it comes to Legends Z-A, inside of me there are two wolves, or Growlithe, or Lycanrocs, a wolf Pokemon. One wolf is my current existing attitude towards the state of Pokemon. As I've gotten older, I guess you could say I've gotten more cynical at the state of the world and the motivations as to why things are the way that they are. I come to Pokemon every few years for a very specific experience that it provides, and to be connected to the nostalgia of my childhood, to be taken back to when things didn't seem like they were so bad. Maybe I was just too young to know any better and things were actually bad the whole time. Who knows? My attitude towards Pokemon since I became an adult has been largely one of acceptance. Throughout all of the Pokédex controversies, subpar graphical releases, my attitude has consistently been that Pokemon's not just the video game, it's a product aimed at a much younger demographic, and it is a product that the Pokemon Company wants to invest as little capital as possible and release for as much money as possible. It's not that Game Freak can't make a modern generation video game when given the chance, just look at their upcoming game Beasts of Reincarnation. Despite how bad it was, people still bought Scarlet and Violet. Despite the egregious actions of scalpers in the Pokemon trading card scene, nothing is done about it because at the end of the day, the product gets bought and the Pokemon Company makes money. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong for demanding that the product they are selling you achieve a certain graphical or performance standard, especially when you spend your hard-earned money on a game that you expect to function upon purchase. But that has never been Pokemon. The first games were buggy nightmares, including the fixed red and blue versions they eventually released in the United States, and they succeeded in spite of that because of a coordinated blitz of marketing, merchandising, and an anime. They've always been games relegated to handhelds, so they've never pushed the technological boundaries of video games. This is the reality that I had accepted, and I couldn't muster the energy to join the perpetually disappointed chorus of fans that accompanies each Pokemon release. Even if the games were buggy, unoptimized, or not up to standards, as long as I got the core experience that I came for, I was content. Maybe I'm just part of the problem. Maybe I just see Pokemon, I buy product, therefore it has no incentive to get better. You can blame it all on me. That's perfectly fine. The second wolf inside me was a surprise, despite all of the truths that I had come to accept and come to terms with. The second wolf cared about something deeper than the Pokemon experience. I became fixated with this question that Z-Alpha had asked: how do you build a society in which humans and Pokemon live together that didn't end in catastrophe? And I didn't know why I cared so much. This isn't the first time Pokemon asked a question like this. Black and White asks a similar philosophical question: do Pokemon like being caught by humans to live with them or to battle? That was the whole mission statement of Team Plasma and the crusade that N fought for in the original versions. But a really fascinating question like that is quickly abandoned as Black and White wastes no time reinforcing the core ideology of the series, that friendship between Pokemon and people is a true virtue, and that people and Pokemon battle together to grow and learn about themselves and realize their true power. There's little consideration of Team Plasma's question, as they are immediately cast as the antagonists to our core cast of characters. I know Ghetsis is a bad dude in the end and he doesn't really drink his own Kool-Aid, but it's still an interesting question. The same thing happens in Z-Alpha. This question of Pokemon and human coexistence is a central one. People talk about it all the time. There's a whole corporation in Lumiose leading the urban redevelopment project to figure out how to harmonize the existence between people and Pokemon. But at the end of the day, this question was never addressed in a way that felt satisfactory to me. The epic set piece that concluded the main story simply served to reinforce the series' main theme, that when Pokemon and people work together, they can overcome any challenge. Of course that was the outcome. Why was I surprised? Why was I disappointed? Why did I leave Lumiose feeling unsatisfied when I knew deep down that this would be the outcome, the same outcome for every Pokemon game I've played for the last 30 years now? Maybe the second wolf would be better off going back into hibernation so I can go back to the understanding of Pokemon I've held for most of my adult life. And maybe that's the key. As I just mentioned, Pokemon turned 30 this year. It's a series that has been with me for basically my entire life. I vividly remember the day I was introduced to it, and I still maintain friendships that were forged by Pokemon to this day. I'm approaching my mid-30s, and I have kids of my own that I hope to introduce to the series someday. All of these things have continued to shape and evolve the way I see the world And at this point in my life, maybe that was something I projected onto Z Alpha. Sure, I came to it for a familiar and expected Pokemon experience, but this time I wanted something more. During the past 5 years I've been podcasting and creating, I've played some truly incredible games that tell intricate stories with themes and narratives that have a lot to say about the way I've felt over the past decade and the state of the world today. Aside from Mario and Kingdom Hearts, Pokemon is a series that I have engaged with longer than any other. There's deep-rooted emotions, friendships, and various other feelings tied to it. But as I get older, maybe, just maybe, there was a desire to see the series I grew up with grow up a little bit alongside me, to ask a bit tougher questions and provide a bit tougher answers. The power of friendship is good and all, but the world is so much more complicated. Questions and answers are so much more complex. There's less black and white and so much more gray. I mentioned my kids, wanting to introduce them to the series, which is kind of insane if you think about it. Outside of Star Wars, I don't think there were very many things left from my dad's childhood that he introduced to me that still had significant staying power when I was growing up. But Pokemon is 30 and still just as popular as it was when I was a kid, if not more so. I played the Game Boy games at every sleepover with my friends. I watched Ash go on his adventures every day before school, opened uncountable packs of cards, and was in the audience for the first movie. A lot of time has passed. I am not the kid I was back then. The world is so much different. Speaking of Ash, the anime recently concluded his multi-decade story by having him achieve his ultimate dream, becoming champion of the world, becoming a Pokemon master. It had been a long time since I watched the anime, but I remember that this was a big deal when it happened. Pokemon was finally wrapping up Ash's story, and it was bittersweet. It brought back a lot of feelings, and there was a lot of reflection by fans online about how much we'd grown up since Ash first set out on his adventure. But Pokemon had finally decided it was time, clearly wanting to tell a new story for a new generation of fans. And that's really it, isn't it? I want to introduce my kids to the series. Pokemon wants a new story for a new generation of fans. That's the key to all of this. No matter how much I grow up, no matter how much myself and older fans of the series might feel that we want more out of these games, ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a series aimed at kids. Occasionally, the games might ask an interesting philosophical question that would be something that you would have to genuinely consider if you lived in this world, but those questions are never anything more than devices to reinforce what Pokemon has always been about, that people and Pokemon are friends and together they can do anything. It's a great message for kids, and it's not like there aren't elements of Pokemon that aren't more adult experiences. Beneath Pokemon's kid-friendly outer shell is a near unlimited universe of possibility when you start diving into Pokemon stats, natures, EVs, IVs, and items. Mastery of these systems is required to play the game at the highest competitive level, and with the number of Pokemon available, the combinations are almost infinite. We add on restrictive rule sets like Nuzlocke challenges to make the game more interesting for our mature brains. But most people probably don't engage with deep team crafting that Pokemon offers. They play the base surface level experiences, and that is what most kids and people know as Pokemon. As we get older, I think we have this unrealistic expectation that the things we love should grow up with us, and this includes that Pokemon experience. We want the things we experience as kids to mature alongside us as we experience the world. We want them to make us feel the same way we did back then. It was easy to buy into the friendship messaging of Pokemon as kids, but now as adults, we want the media we love to reflect the more complex situations we experience in the real world. Things should get better as technology improves. Things can't remain static, they can't remain the same. They must always grow and chase goalposts that continue to move. Nor can things end. Pokemon persists. The formula continues to print money, despite not changing all that much over the years. The Legends series is the most refreshing thing the franchise has done in a long time, but even Arceus and Z Alpha still feel like Pokemon. Now, don't get me confused, I'm not preaching apathy here. I'm not saying you need to lower your expectations and accept an inferior product. Pokemon games cost money, and you have every right to demand that your $60 or $70 purchase at least functions competently when you play it. I'm saying that maybe, just maybe, we get a little bit too excited when a new game is announced. Maybe we get just a bit ahead of our skis, expecting that this game will be the one that takes the leap, that grows up, that looks like a modern game and grapples with more mature narrative and themes. Pokemon is what it has always been, and I'm not quite sure why I expected any different. Since I started writing this relatively short piece, Pokemon announced the next entry in the series on its Pokemon Day stream, Pokemon Winds and Waves. And the trailer looked impressive, at least compared to what we've seen from previous generations. The new starters became instantly iconic, and the visual presentation looked to be a significant step up from Scarlet and Violet. We'll have to see. As we learn more about Generation 10, I can already see how the hype cycle will play out. We'll argue about graphics, we'll argue about Pokemon that are included and excluded, we'll argue about whatever the new gimmick mechanic is. If the hype cycles of Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet taught me anything, it's that these topics will be fiercely debated even after Winds and Waves releases. And who knows, maybe these will be the games that take the series forward in a meaningful way. Maybe they will ask meaningful questions. Maybe it will be better designed and better optimized. The expectations will be on Winds and Waves to answer these questions, especially for fans who insist on the games growing up with them. But if that were to happen, if the games did grow up, would they still be Pokemon in the first place? There's a lot of hype and even more questions now that Generation 10 has been announced, but I can guarantee you one thing. At their core, they will be unapologetically, unquestionably, unequivocally Pokemon.